My name is Daniel Collins. I am a 2012 graduate of the University of Texas at Austin School of Law. Right now, I am a legislative attorney, so not typical practice. I work for a state elected official, a state senator. I work on myriad issue areas, including higher education, veterans affairs, and agriculture issues, also energy and the environment, sort of duties as assigned, which I think is pretty typical of most legislative attorneys working in the state's capital. I think my coming out process was, I was described as a pretty non-angsty coming out process. My parents are hugely supportive and always have been for my whole life, not just in this, but in everything else that I do. So I haven't had to deal with a lot of the family stressors that I think a lot of other out gay attorneys have had to deal with, which I'm grateful for. But all the same, you never, especially when you're first coming out of the closet, you never really know what people's reactions are going to be. So the older I get, become probably less and less mindful of that and don't really think too much about revealing that I'm out and gay or that I, have a partner or that my associations include LGBT advocacy organizations. But that was kind of a slow process, maybe one that I didn't quite realize was as slow as it was until here I am sitting here, not thinking too much about being an out gay attorney. Well, I guess I have also been pretty fortunate in that I have mostly worked for liberal Democrats, for liberal senators. So it's never been an issue in that role for me to be out or for my bosses to know who I was dating. And it's never really been an issue for my coworkers. So I'm pretty fortunate in that regard as well. I will say I have, until recently, been almost always the only out gay person in a work environment. But even that's changing. That's changing in the Texas Capitol. I know many more out gay attorneys and just out gay policy analysts in the Capitol. I've had gay coworkers since then. So it's just become a much more open and inclusive work environment, even for me, even though I feel like I've mostly always been in an out and inclusive work environment. I will say, as a law student, I did still have some apprehension. Um, and I think I mostly got over it and recognized that, if I determined that some person that I was considering taking a job with or was interviewing with wouldn't have been accepting of me as a gay person, um, I think I've always recognized that that's ultimately not a place I want to work or people I want to associate with. And that can be a kind of a scary thing when you're a law student that just wants to find a job. But yeah, never since graduating have I felt like I couldn't be out and perfectly myself and candid with people that I was interacting with professionally. Um, and plus, when I think back on the times when I was maybe concerned about that as a law student, um, I think I also had to remind myself that you got to give people an opportunity. People can surprise you, and you shouldn't just assume that someone who's sitting opposite you, whether they be a judge or someone who's a hiring partner at a firm, I don't think you should go in expecting that they're going to have a bias against you because you're LGBT. For anyone that is unsure about whether or not they should be out in their professional lives, out in their personal lives, out to people that they care about. Um, I think the one thing to keep in mind is that it might be scary for you in your particular situation, but you might also unknowingly be a role model to someone else in your life. And I think about that all the time, especially, in my job now. I almost always have interns that are in my office or just young people who are just getting started working in policy. And when I was just getting started in my job, around the late first decade, around 2008 or 2009, I really didn't know any other out gay people that were working in my environment. And I think I would have really appreciated having had someone who, not necessarily being an actual mentor, but just someone who was there thriving as a gay person for me to look up to. I think it's important to recognize that you might be that person. You might be someone who is thriving and being successful and serving as an inspiration to someone else who might be struggling with whether or not they should out themselves as gay. I think it's really important for all gay people to be out, not just for themselves, but for the other people that are coming behind them. I'm a member of the Bar Association in Austin. I actually was fortunate enough to kind of get in on the ground floor when the association was just starting while I was a law student, and in partnership with the attorneys that were forming the group, created a mentor program for out gay students at UT Law School. And that's a program that's still going on today, these few years later. Which I think has been really successful in developing the next generation of out gay attorneys who are practicing in all different areas of the law, but I think have a real focus on making sure that they are working in the advancement of LGBT equality wherever they go. Even if there isn't a bar association in your part of the states, in your part of the world, there are still people that want you to be successful and want to be a resource to you. If you're in Texas, there's also the state's LGBT bar section. I would encourage anyone to reach out to them because they are always available to be a resource and always really interested in making sure that out gay attorneys have an outlet for expressing themselves and being involved in the community. So I think, and if there isn't an organization like that wherever you are in the state or world, consider creating one. Consider creating a space for yourself and people like you, because I guarantee you are not by yourself. I guarantee you're not the only person there. Again, starting to see this association form here in Austin, it didn't take very much for us to start finding a lot of attorneys that were both LGBT identifying and allies that wanted to be supportive. And people might surprise you. You might end up having more allies than you know.